My wife said she was going on a girls' trip. What she didn't say was that Julian Wright would be her only traveling companion, and their destination would be his glass-walled house 3 miles from our lakeside home. I'm Eddie Chambers, 42 years old, and I renovate houses for a living. Not glamorous work, but honest. My hands are calloused, my back aches most mornings, and I drive a 10-year-old pickup truck that Lena constantly apologizes for when her advertising agency friends come around. "Eddie, honey, use this time to reflect on your mistakes," Lena said that Friday evening, zipping up her designer suitcase. She stood in our bedroom doorway, perfectly styled blonde hair catching the lamplight, her expression that familiar mixture of condescension and impatience I'd grown to recognize over our 8 years of marriage. "Safe travels, sweetheart," I replied, not looking up from my newspaper. "I'll do some serious reflecting." She kissed my forehead like I was her disappointing child. The spa retreat is exactly what I need. Sierra and I have been planning this for months. Complete digital detox, no phones, just pure relaxation. I watched through our bedroom window as she loaded her car, noting the expensive lingerie visible in her suitcase, odd choice for a spa weekend with her best friend. But I said nothing. I'd learned that questioning Lena only led to lectures about trust and my paranoid tendencies. After her BMW disappeared down our winding driveway, I settled into my workshop in the garage. This was my sanctuary, filled with tools that never lied, wood that responded to honest work, and projects that had clear beginnings and satisfying endings, unlike my marriage. I was sanding a cabinet door when I heard the vibrating. At first I thought it was my phone, but the sound came from the laundry room. Following the noise, I found Lena's second phone, the one she thought I didn't know about, buzzing inside a sock at the bottom of the hamper. The screen lit up with a text from Jay. "Can't wait to have you all to myself this weekend. I've got champagne and those silk sheets you love." My hands didn't shake. That surprised me. I scrolled through more messages, each one more explicit than the last. Julian Wright, creative director at Lena's agency, had been documenting their affair in graphic detail for months. The late meetings and client dinners suddenly made perfect sense. I sat on our washing machine, holding the evidence of my wife's betrayal, and started laughing. Not the bitter laugh of a broken man, but the genuine amusement of someone who'd just solved a puzzle. All those times Lena had accused me of not paying attention, of being emotionally unavailable, of needing to work on myself. She'd been projecting her own guilt onto me. My phone buzzed. A text from Lena. "Arrived safely. The spa is gorgeous. About to turn off my phone for the digital detox. Love you." I opened the Find My Phone app. I'd set it up months ago when Lena lost her primary phone at a restaurant. According to the GPS, she was at 1247 Lakeview Drive, not at the Serenity Springs Spa Resort 2 hours north. I knew that address. Julian Wright's house. I'd driven past it during a job last year, admiring the modern architecture and floor-to-ceiling windows that offered no privacy but maximum pretension. My reflection time was just beginning. I grabbed my binoculars, I used them for surveying job sites, and drove to the public boat launch across the lake from Julian's house. The late evening sun cast everything in golden light, and the water was calm enough to provide a perfect view of Julian's glass palace. There was Lena, very much not at a spa, wearing a red silk robe I'd never seen before. Julian stood behind her on his deck, his hands on her shoulders, both of them laughing at some private joke. They looked comfortable together, familiar in a way that spoke of months, not weeks, of intimacy. I called Lena's primary phone. She answered on the third ring, her voice artificially bright. "Eddie, I told you I was doing a digital detox. Just wanted to make sure you arrived safely," I said, watching her through the binoculars as she gestured animatedly while lying to my face. "How's the spa?" "Oh, it's incredible. Sierra and I just finished a yoga session. We're about to have herbal tea and go to bed early. You know how these wellness retreats are." Julian appeared beside her, shirtless, offering her a glass of champagne. She mouthed, "Thank you," and kissed his cheek. "Sounds relaxing," I said. "Get plenty of rest." "I will." I love you, Eddie. I'm sure you do, I replied, watching as Julian's hands wandered across the silk robe. Sweet dreams, Lena. I hung up and lowered the binoculars. The sun was setting behind Julian's house, and I could see them clearly through those ridiculous glass walls. Lena had always been obsessed with appearances, with surfaces, with how things looked from the outside. She'd chosen the perfect lover, a man whose house was essentially a fishbowl, whose entire life was on display for anyone who cared to look. Guess that's hot stone massage with benefits, I muttered, starting my truck. Saturday morning, I called my work partner, Nate Rodriguez. If I was going to do this right, I needed backup, and Nate was the most reliable man I knew. Ex-military, divorced twice, and blessed with a complete inability to tolerate dishonesty. Eddie, it's 7 a.m, Nate grumbled into the phone. Lena's cheating on me with Julian Wright from her agency. I have proof. Want to help me return the favor? Silence. Then, I'll be there in 20 minutes. Put on coffee. Nate arrived wearing his work clothes and a grim expression. I showed him Lena's hidden phone and the text messages. He scrolled through them with the same methodical attention he brought to reading blueprints. Jesus, Eddie, how long has this been going on? Based on these messages, at least 6 months, maybe longer. What do you want to do about it? I'd been thinking about that all night. I want her to see herself clearly. She spent years telling me I need to reflect on my mistakes, work on myself, be better. Time for some mutual reflection. Nate grinned. I like the sound of that. What's the plan? We started with Lena's car. She'd left it in our driveway, planning to drive Julian's Mercedes to maintain the spa story. Nate had learned a few things about locks during his army days, and Lena's BMW opened like it was welcoming us home. Inside, we found more evidence. Receipts from expensive restaurants I'd never been to, a spare key to Julian's house, and a folder of printed emails discussing their weekend getaways. Lena was nothing if not organized, even in her adultery. She's been planning this for months, Nate observed, photographing everything with his phone. Look at this. She's got a whole timeline for leaving you. Says here she wants to wait until after your anniversary so she can maximize the settlement. That stung more than the affair itself, the calculated coldness of it, the long-term planning. I wasn't just being cheated on, I was being played. We drove Lena's car to Murphy's Tavern, the local dive bar where half the town gathered for weekend breakfast. I parked it prominently in the lot and used soap to write "cheater" across the rear windshield in letters large enough to read from space. Inside Murphy's, the usual crowd was assembled. Construction workers, retirees, and Barb McKenna, the bartender who knew everyone's business and wasn't shy about sharing it. Eddie Chambers, Barb called out as we entered. Haven't seen you in weeks. Where's that fancy wife of yours? Spa weekend, I said, sliding onto a bar stool. Hey Barb, you know Julian Wright, creative director, drives a silver Mercedes? Barb's expression shifted to something between amusement and disgust. Oh, I know Julian. Comes in here sometimes with different women. Tips like he's doing us a favor, acts like this place is beneath him. Why? Just curious. Ever see him with a blonde, about 5'6", designer clothes, acts like she owns the world? Your wife? Barb's eyebrows shot up. Eddie, honey, I've seen them together at least a dozen times over the past few months. Always figured you knew. They sit in the corner booth, all hands and whispered conversations. She tips well, but she's got that attitude, you know, like she's slumming it. The entire bar had gone quiet. Everyone was listening now, and I could see the mixture of sympathy and anticipation in their faces. Small-town drama was better than cable television. Thanks for the information, Barb. Good to know. Nate and I finished our coffee in silence while the whispers started around us. By noon, half the town would know that Eddie Chambers had been asking questions about his wife and Julian Wright. By evening, the other half would know too. We drove back to Julian's house. In daylight, the glass walls seemed even more ridiculous. I could see Lena moving around inside, wearing one of Julian's shirts and nothing else. They were having breakfast on his deck, feeding each other strawberries like teenagers. I took photos. Lots of photos. Not for divorce proceedings, those would come later, but for the public education of my wife. Lena had always been concerned about her image, her reputation, her standing in the community. She was about to learn that glass houses and public affairs don't mix well. "What's next?" Nate asked. I thought about Lena's words from the night before. "Use this time to reflect on your mistakes." She'd meant it as an insult, another way to make me feel small and inadequate. But reflection requires a mirror, and mirrors show you exactly what you are, not what you pretend to be. "We're going to give her what she asked for," I said. A chance to reflect. That evening, I used Julian's own vanity against him. His house had security cameras. I could see them mounted around the property, and like most tech-obsessed people, he probably had them connected to his home network. A little research revealed that Julian Wright was exactly the kind of person who used his pet's name as his Wi-Fi password. His social media was full of photos of his golden retriever, Gatsby. From my truck across the lake, I connected to his network and accessed his security system. Modern technology is wonderful when people don't bother to change default passwords. Julian's cameras were broadcasting to his phone and computer, but they could just as easily broadcast to his social media accounts. I set up a live stream from his bedroom camera to his Instagram account, scheduled to go live at midnight. The caption read, "Late night activities at the Wright residence. Hashtag no filter, hashtag authentic, hashtag transparency." By the time Julian discovered it, half his followers would have screenshots. The other half would be sharing the link. My phone buzzed with a text from Lena. "Missing you. This digital detox is exactly what I needed. See you tomorrow night. XOXO. I looked across the lake at Julian's house, where Lena was very much not detoxing from anything digital. She was taking selfies with Julian's phone, probably for her own private collection of affair memories. "Should have been a mirror, not a window," I muttered. "Reflection's a bitch, Lena." Sunday brought the annual Lakeside Festival, a community event that drew half the county to our little town. Local businesses set up booths, families brought picnics, and everyone who was anyone made an appearance. It was the perfect stage for what I had planned. Lena was supposed to return from her spa weekend that evening, but I had other plans for her homecoming. I'd spent the morning preparing, and now I sat on a bench near the festival's main stage, waiting. At noon, I sent a text from Lena's hidden phone to Julian. "Emergency. Eddie knows something. Meet me at the festival bandstand. Come alone. We need to talk." 15 minutes later, Julian's silver Mercedes pulled into the festival parking lot. He stepped out wearing designer jeans and a polo shirt that probably cost more than I made in a week. Even in casual clothes, he managed to look like he was posing for a magazine. I watched him scan the crowd, looking for Lena. He checked his phone, typed a response, and headed toward the bandstand. Perfect. At 12:30, I called Lena's primary phone. "Eddie!" I was just about to leave the spa. "How's your weekend been?" "Enlightening," I said. "Listen, I'm at the festival and I found your phone." "The one you thought you lost last week?" A pause. "My phone? But I have my phone. Not your regular phone, your other phone. The one with all the interesting text messages." The silence stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. Finally, "I don't know what you're talking about?" "Sure you do, Lena. Julian's been very descriptive about your spa treatments, especially the ones involving silk sheets and champagne." "Eddie, I can explain." "I'm sure you can. Why don't you come down to the festival? Julian's already here looking for you. Seems he got your text about meeting at the bandstand." Another long pause. "What text? Eddie, what are you doing?" "Giving you what you asked for. A chance to reflect. See you soon, sweetheart." I hung up and positioned myself where I could see both Julian and the parking lot. Julian was getting agitated, checking his phone repeatedly and scanning the crowd. A few people had recognized him. He was locally famous for the agency's flashy advertising campaigns, and some were pointing and whispering. Lena's BMW screeched into the parking lot 20 minutes later. She practically ran toward the bandstand, her designer outfit and perfect hair making her stand out among the casual festival goers. When she spotted Julian, she grabbed his arm and they moved away from the crowd, toward the lake. I followed at a distance, along with about 30 other curious festival-goers who had noticed the drama unfolding. Small towns love a good scene, and this was shaping up to be memorable. "What the hell is going on?" I heard Julian demand as they reached the lakeside pavilion. "Eddie knows," Lena hissed. "He has my phone. He's been watching us." "What phone? You said you only had one phone." "I lied, okay?" I had to have a way to communicate without him knowing. The crowd around them was growing. People were pretending to look at the lake while obviously listening to every word. I recognized several of Lena's co-workers from the agency, including Carmen Martinez, who had never liked Lena and was now recording everything on her phone. "You lied to me?" Julian's voice carried across the water. "About what else?" "It doesn't matter now. We need to figure out what to do about Eddie. What to do about me." I stepped out from behind a tree, Lena's hidden phone in my hand. "I'm right here. Why don't we all figure this out together?" Lena's face went white. Julian looked like he wanted to run, but there were too many people watching now. The festival crowd had formed a loose circle around us, phones out, recording everything. "Eddie, please," Lena said. "Not here. Not like this." "Why not here?" I asked, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You've been very public about your relationship." Julian's security cameras have been broadcasting to his Instagram account. Very authentic content. Julian's phone buzzed. He looked at it and his face turned red. "What did you do?" "I gave you what you wanted. Transparency, authenticity, no filters." I turned to address the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to meet my wife Lena and her lover Julian. They've been having an affair for 6 months, while she told me I needed to work on myself." The crowd murmured. Several people applauded. Carmen Martinez was grinning as she continued recording. "You want a piece of me?" Julian stepped forward, trying to salvage some dignity through aggression. "You think you can humiliate us like this?" I laughed. "Julian, you humiliated yourselves. I just provided the mirror." He swung at me. I saw it coming from a mile away. Julian was the type who had never been in a real fight in his life. I stepped aside and slapped him across the face, hard enough to sting but not hard enough to do real damage. The crowd gasped. Julian stumbled backward, holding his cheek, looking shocked that someone had actually hit him. "That's assault," he sputtered. "That's a wake-up call," I replied. "You've been sleeping with another man's wife and you're worried about a slap?" Sierra Thompson, Lena's supposed best friend, pushed through the crowd. "Lena, honey, what's going on?" "What's going on?" Carmen Martinez called out, still recording. "Is that Lena's been cheating on her husband with Julian for months. And that's not even the worst part." All eyes turned to Carmen. She was enjoying this, and I could see why. Lena had always treated her co-workers like servants. "Tell them about the Henderson account, Lena," Carmen continued. "Tell them how you sabotaged my presentation so you could get the credit. Tell them about the expense reports you falsified. Tell them about the client information you've been sharing with Julian so he could undercut other agencies." Lena's perfect composure finally cracked. "Carmen, you don't know what you're talking about." "I know exactly what I'm talking about. I've been documenting everything for months, waiting for the right moment. Guess that moment is now." The crowd was eating this up. Phones were recording from every angle. By evening, this would be all over social media. By tomorrow, it would be the talk of the entire county. Lena tried to regain control. "This is all a misunderstanding. Eddie, you're hurt and you're not thinking clearly. We can work this out at home, privately." "Work what out?" I asked. "Your affair? Your lies? Your plan to leave me after our anniversary so you could maximize the settlement?" "Yeah, I found that folder in your car." Julian was backing away, clearly wanting to escape, but the crowd had him hemmed in. Sierra looked confused and betrayed. Apparently she really had thought Lena was at a spa. "Lena," Sierra said slowly, "you told me you were going to a wellness retreat. You said you needed time away from Eddie to think about your marriage." "I did need time to think," Lena said desperately. With Julian? Sierra's voice was getting louder. You lied to me too? You used me as your alibi? The crowd sensed more drama coming and pressed closer. This was better than the festival's main stage entertainment. Ladies and gentlemen, I announced, my wife wanted me to reflect on my mistakes. So I did, and I realized my biggest mistake was tolerating someone who runs away instead of solving problems. When she asked for a list of my mistakes, I decided to give her a solution instead. I pulled out a manila envelope and handed it to Lena. Divorce papers, already filed. Your affair is documented, your financial improprieties are documented, and your lies are documented. Oh, and Julian, your wife might want to see these photos. Julian went pale. My wife? Did you forget you were married too? Tiffany Wright, right? Lovely woman. I'm sure she'll be very interested in your weekend activities. The crowd was applauding now. Someone shouted, Good for you, Eddie! Another voice called out, About time someone stood up to those two. Lena was crying, her makeup running, her perfect image literally and figuratively dissolving in front of half the town. Julian was frantically trying to call someone, probably his wife, but his hands were shaking too badly to work his phone. This isn't over, Lena said through her tears. Yes, it is, I replied. It's been over for months. You just didn't bother to tell me. I walked away, leaving them to face the crowd and the consequences of their choices. Behind me, I could hear Carmen Martinez still providing commentary for her recording, Sierra demanding explanations from Lena, and Julian trying unsuccessfully to convince people that this was all a misunderstanding. My phone buzzed with a text from Nate. Saw the show on Carmen's Instagram live stream. Julian's car has 4 flat tires and some interesting graffiti. Weird how karma works. I smiled. Guess karma's a spray paint enthusiast. Monday morning brought consequences. Lena's affair was the talk of the town, but more importantly, it was the talk of her workplace. I knew this because Carmen Martinez called me at 7 a.m. Eddie, you need to know what's happening at the agency, she said without preamble. Lena's been suspended pending investigation, Julian's been fired, and there's more. More? Remember what I said about the Henderson account? I wasn't just talking. I've been building a case against Lena for months. She's been stealing credit for other people's work, falsifying expense reports, and sharing confidential client information with Julian so he could poach accounts for his side business. This was news to me. Julian has a side business? Had. He's been running a competing agency under his girlfriend's name, using information from our clients to undercut us. Lena was his inside source. I sat down hard in my kitchen chair. I'd thought this was just about an affair, but it was bigger than that. Lena hadn't just betrayed me. She'd betrayed everyone who trusted her. Why are you telling me this, Carmen? Because Lena's going to try to blame you for everything. She's already started, claiming you're unstable, that you forced her into Julian's arms with your emotional abuse. She's painting herself as the victim. Of course she was. Lena had never taken responsibility for anything in her life. Why start now? What do you need from me? Nothing. Just wanted you to be prepared. Oh, and Eddie? That folder you found in her car? The one about maximizing the divorce settlement? She's been planning this for over a year. There's a whole strategy mapped out. After Carmen hung up, I sat in my kitchen drinking coffee and processing this information. Lena hadn't just had an affair, she'd orchestrated an elaborate plan to destroy our marriage while positioning herself for maximum financial gain. The spa weekend wasn't a spontaneous getaway, it was the beginning of her exit strategy. My phone rang, Lena. Eddie, we need to talk. I think we covered everything yesterday at the festival. Please, I'm at the Lakeside Motel, room 12. Just give me 10 minutes to explain. The Lakeside Motel was a rundown place on the edge of town, the kind of establishment that rented rooms by the hour and didn't ask questions. The fact that Lena was staying there instead of at Julian's Glass Palace told me their relationship had hit some turbulence. I drove over, curious despite myself. Lena answered the door wearing jeans and a t-shirt, the most casual I'd seen her dressed in years. Her hair was unwashed, her face bare of makeup, and she looked exhausted. Thank you for coming, she said, stepping aside to let me in. The room was exactly what you'd expect. Faded carpet, mismatched furniture, and the lingering smell of industrial disinfectant. Lena's designer suitcase looked absurd in the shabby surroundings. Quite a step down from Julian's place, I observed. Julian and we're taking a break. His wife found out about us. She's filing for divorce and going after half his assets. He's not handling it well. Imagine that. Actions having consequences. What a concept. Lena sat on the bed looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. Eddie, I know you're angry. You have every right to be. But what you did yesterday was cruel. What I did was honest. Maybe for the first time in our marriage. You destroyed my reputation, my career, my friendships, everything I worked for. I stared at her. You destroyed those things yourself, Lena. I just held up a mirror. I made mistakes. You made choices. For months, calculated, deliberate choices. You didn't slip and fall into Julian's bed. You planned it. You strategized it. You used me as your safety net while you figured out your exit strategy. She started crying, but even her tears felt manipulative. Everything with Lena was performance. I was unhappy, she said. We were drifting apart. You were always working, always tired. I felt neglected. So, you decided to cheat instead of talking to me about it. Then you decided to steal from your company. Then you decided to plan a divorce that would leave me with nothing while you rode off into the sunset with your lover and my money. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. I found your folder, remember? The timeline, the strategy, the financial projections. You had it all mapped out. Lena's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and her face went white. What now? I asked. Julian's been arrested. Something about fraud and embezzlement. The police want to talk to me. This was getting interesting. What kind of fraud? I don't know. His side business, maybe? Eddie, I think I need a lawyer. You definitely need a lawyer. You probably need several lawyers. She looked up at me with desperate eyes. Will you help me? I know I don't deserve it, but I don't have anyone else. The request was so absurd, I laughed. Help you? Lena, you spent months planning to destroy my life. You cheated on me, lied to me, and tried to steal from me. Now you want my help because your master plan backfired? I never meant for it to go this far. You meant for it to go exactly this far. You just didn't plan on getting caught. I stood to leave. Good luck with the lawyers, Lena, and the police, and Julian's wife's divorce attorney. You're going to need it. Eddie, please. You wanted me to reflect on my mistakes, I said from the doorway. I did. My mistake was not seeing you clearly sooner. That mistake is corrected now. I left her in that shabby motel room, surrounded by the wreckage of her own choices. Outside, I called Nate. How's the revenge business? He asked. Booming. Julian's been arrested for fraud, Lena's about to be questioned by police, and I'm just getting started. What's next? I thought about it. Lena had spent our entire marriage making me feel small, inadequate, like I needed to constantly prove myself worthy of her attention. She'd used my love for her as a weapon against me, making me doubt myself while she planned my destruction. It was time for her to experience some self-doubt of her own. We're going to build her a reflection room, I said. Somewhere she can really see herself clearly. I like the sound of that. What do you need? Mirrors, lots of mirrors, and access to the construction site on Elm Street. The Elm Street project was a half-finished office building that had been abandoned when the developer ran out of money. It sat empty, surrounded by chain-link fence, waiting for someone to either complete it or tear it down. The building had potential, 5 stories of steel and concrete overlooking the lake, but it needed work. It was perfect for what I had in mind. That night, Nate and I loaded my truck with mirrors salvaged from renovation jobs, along with extension cords, work lights, and a portable generator. Getting into the construction site was easy. I knew which security company had the contract, and I knew they only did drive-by checks twice per night. We set up on the top floor, which was nothing but concrete floors, steel beams, and empty window frames. The view of the lake was spectacular, and the open space gave us room to work. We arranged the mirrors in a circle, angled so they reflected into each other, creating an infinite regression of reflections. In the center, We set up a chair and a small table. On the table, I placed printouts of Lena's text messages, her financial planning documents, her strategy memos about the divorce, and photos of her with Julian. The work lights turned the space into something between an art installation and an interrogation room. Every surface reflected light and shadow, creating a disorienting funhouse effect. "This is either brilliant or insane," Nate observed. "Maybe both," I admitted. "But Lena's spent years avoiding the truth about herself. Time for some forced introspection." We finished at 3 a.m. As we packed up our tools, I sent a text from Lena's hidden phone to Julian's phone. "Meet me at the Elm Street construction site tomorrow at midnight. Top floor. We need to end this properly." Then, I sent a text to Lena's primary phone from a burner phone. "Your husband has something to show you. Elm Street construction site, midnight tomorrow. Come alone if you want to avoid more public humiliation." The stage was set for the final act. Tuesday dragged by like a slow-motion car crash. I went through the motions of work, but my mind was on the evening ahead. Nate and I had spent the morning making final preparations at the construction site, testing the lighting and making sure everything was perfect. At 11 p.m., I positioned myself in the building's stairwell with a clear view of the top floor. Nate was stationed outside, watching for arrivals. The plan was simple. Let Lena and Julian confront each other in the reflection room, then make my final appearance to end this chapter of my life once and for all. Julian arrived first, at 11:45. He looked terrible, unshaven, wearing wrinkled clothes, moving like a man who hadn't slept in days. His arrest had made the local news, and the charges were serious: embezzlement, fraud, conspiracy. His side business had been built on stolen client information and falsified contracts. He was looking at years in prison. He climbed the stairs slowly, calling out for Lena. When he reached the top floor and saw the reflection room, he stopped dead. "What the hell is this?" he muttered, stepping into the circle of mirrors. The effect was immediate and disorienting. Everywhere Julian looked, he saw himself reflected infinitely, surrounded by the evidence of his crimes and his affair. The documents on the table seemed to glow under the work lights. "Lena," he called out, his voice echoing strangely in the space. "Lena, what is this place?" Lena arrived 10 minutes later. She climbed the stairs cautiously, clearly expecting a trap. When she saw Julian standing in the center of the mirror circle, she stopped at the edge of the room. "Julian? What are you doing here?" "You texted me," he said, turning toward her voice. The movement created a kaleidoscope effect in the mirrors, multiplying his image dozens of times. "You said we needed to end this properly." "I didn't text you anything." Lena stepped into the reflection room, and suddenly, there were infinite versions of both of them, reflected and re-reflected, until they seemed to fill the entire space. "Eddie did this. This is his doing." They were both looking around now, seeing themselves from every angle, surrounded by the evidence of their betrayal. The mirrors showed them exactly what they were: two selfish people who had destroyed multiple lives for their own gratification. "Look at this," Lena said, picking up the printed text messages. "He's got everything. Every conversation, every plan, every detail." "The police have everything too," Julian said bitterly. "Your friend Carmen made sure of that. Did you know she was recording our conversations? For months? Carmen was recording us? She's been building a case against both of us." The affair was just the beginning. She documented the embezzlement, the client theft, everything. She played us, Lena. She played us perfectly. This was news to me. I'd underestimated Carmen Martinez. While I'd been planning my personal revenge, she'd been orchestrating something much more comprehensive. Lena sank into the chair at the center of the room. Surrounded by mirrors, she looked like a broken kaleidoscope, fractured into 1,000 guilty pieces. "My lawyer says I'm looking at criminal charges," she said quietly. "Conspiracy, fraud, theft. The agency is suing me for damages. Julian's wife is naming me in her divorce suit." "My lawyer says I might get 10 years, Julian replied. "Federal charges, Lena. This isn't just about the affair anymore." They sat in silence for a moment, surrounded by their infinite reflections and the evidence of their crimes. It was almost poetic, two people who had lived their lives focused on surfaces and appearances, trapped in a room of mirrors that showed them nothing but truth. That's when I made my entrance. "Good evening," I said, stepping into the reflection room. "Thank you both for coming." They spun toward me, and suddenly the mirrors were full of all three of us: the cheating wife, the criminal lover, and the betrayed husband who had orchestrated their downfall. "Eddie," Lena breathed. "What is this place?" "This is what you asked for," I replied. "A chance to reflect. I thought you might appreciate the symbolism." Julian stood up, trying to look intimidating despite his obvious fear. "You can't keep us here. This is kidnapping." "You're free to leave any time," I said. "The stairs are right behind you. But before you go, I thought you might want to hear what I learned about reflection." I walked around the circle of mirrors, watching our images multiply and shift with each step. "You see, Lena, when you told me to reflect on my mistakes, you assumed I'd find fault with myself. You assumed I'd take responsibility for your unhappiness, your choices, your betrayal. You wanted me to look in the mirror and see everything wrong with Eddie Chambers." I stopped in front of her chair. "But reflection works both ways. When I really looked at our marriage, I didn't see my failures. I saw yours. I saw a woman who had never taken responsibility for anything, who blamed everyone else for her problems, who used love as a weapon and marriage as a business transaction." Lena's reflection stared back at her from a dozen different angles. "Eddie, I know I hurt you. You didn't just hurt me. You tried to destroy me. Systematically, methodically, over the course of months, you planned to take everything I had while making me believe it was my fault." I turned to Julian. "And you? You thought you were so clever, stealing clients, stealing information, stealing another man's wife. You thought your money and your connections made you untouchable." Julian's multiple reflections looked pale and sick. The business thing was separate from Lena. She didn't know about the client theft. Didn't she? I pulled out a folder from behind one of the mirrors. "These are emails between you two, discussing specific client information, planning which accounts to target, coordinating your theft. Lena wasn't just your lover, Julian. She was your partner in crime." Lena went white. "Those emails, they're taken out of context. The FBI doesn't think so. Neither does the district attorney. Carmen Martinez provided them with everything: your communications, your financial records, your planning documents. You two didn't just have an affair, you ran a criminal enterprise." The room fell silent, except for the hum of the generator powering the lights. In the mirrors, I could see the truth finally hitting them. They weren't just facing divorce and embarrassment. They were facing prison. "What do you want?" Lena asked quietly. "I want you to see yourself clearly. For once in your life, I want you to look in a mirror and see the truth." I gestured around the room. "Look around, Lena. Really look. What do you see?" She turned slowly, taking in all the reflections, all the evidence, all the truth she'd been avoiding for months. "I see someone who made terrible choices," she whispered. "You see someone who is exactly what she chose to be," I corrected. "You weren't driven to this by circumstances or unhappiness or my failures. You chose this. Every step of the way, you chose betrayal over honesty, theft over integrity, selfishness over love." Julian was backing toward the stairs. "I'm leaving." "This is insane." "Go ahead," I said. "But you should know. The FBI is waiting for you at your house, and at your office, and at the airport in case you were thinking of running. Carmen Martinez has been very thorough." He stopped. "What are you talking about?" "While you two were playing your games, Carmen was playing a bigger game. She's been working with federal investigators for months, documenting your crimes, recording your conversations, building an airtight case. She used your affair as cover to get closer to both of you, to gain your trust, to get access to your communications." I smiled. "You thought you were so smart, manipulating everyone around you. But you were being manipulated the whole time. Carmen Martinez played you both like amateurs." The truth hit them like a physical blow. They'd been so focused on their petty schemes that they'd missed the real game being played around them. Sierra was working with Carmen too, I continued. Your best friend, Lena. The one you used as your alibi. She's been reporting back to Carmen about your plans, your movements, your lies. Everyone you trusted was working against you. Lena was crying now, her tears reflecting infinitely in the surrounding mirrors. Why? Why would they do this? Because you made enemies of people who were smarter than you. Because you underestimated everyone around you. Because you thought your beauty and Julian's money made you untouchable. I walked back to the center of the room, standing between them and their infinite reflections. You wanted me to make a list of my mistakes, Lena. Here it is. I trusted you. I loved you. I believed you when you said you wanted to work on our marriage. I gave you the benefit of the doubt when I should have been protecting myself. Those were my mistakes, and I've corrected them. I pulled out a final document and placed it on the table. Divorce papers, signed, filed, and finalized as of this afternoon. I'm not asking for alimony, property division, or anything else from you. I just want you out of my life. Lena stared at the papers. Eddie, please. I know I don't deserve it, but... You're right. You don't deserve it. You don't deserve forgiveness, consideration, or mercy. You deserve exactly what you're getting, the consequences of your choices. I turned to leave, then stopped. Oh, and Lena? That reflection you asked me to do? It showed me something important. It showed me that I'm better off without you. I'm stronger, smarter, and happier without you in my life. Thank you for that gift. I walked toward the stairs, leaving them in their circle of mirrors, surrounded by infinite reflections of their guilt and their failures. Behind me, I heard Lena call out, "What am I supposed to do now?" I paused at the top of the stairs. What you should have done months ago. Take responsibility for your choices. Face the consequences. Learn to live with what you've become. And if I can't? I looked back at her one last time, sitting in that chair surrounded by mirrors that showed her nothing but truth. Then you'll have plenty of time to figure it out. I hear federal prison is very conducive to reflection. I left them there in their glass prison, surrounded by the infinite reflections of their betrayal. As I walked down the stairs, I could hear them starting to argue, blaming each other for their situation, still refusing to take responsibility even in the face of overwhelming evidence. Outside, Nate was waiting by my truck. How'd it go? It's finished, I said. They finally saw themselves clearly. What happens now? I looked back at the building, where lights still glowed on the top floor. Now they face the consequences. Carmen and the FBI will handle the legal side. Julian's wife will handle the financial side, and I'll handle the moving on with my life side. We drove away as police cars began arriving at the construction site. Apparently, Carmen had timed the federal arrests to coincide with my little reflection session. She really had played this perfectly. 3 months later, Julian was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison for fraud and embezzlement. Lena received 5 years for conspiracy and theft. Their criminal enterprise had cost their victims over $2 million, and the judge showed no mercy. I watched the sentencing from the back of the courtroom, not out of vindictiveness, but out of closure. This was the end of the story that had begun with Lena's fake spa weekend and my accidental discovery of her second phone. Carmen Martinez was promoted to creative director at the agency. Sierra Thompson moved to another state, embarrassed by her unwitting role in the affair. Julian's wife divorced him and took everything he owned. And me? I sold the lakeside house and bought a smaller place in the mountains, where the view is honest and the mirrors only show what's really there. I still renovate houses, still work with my hands, still find satisfaction in honest labor that produces tangible results. Sometimes, late at night, I think about that reflection room and the infinite mirrors showing infinite truth. I think about how Lena spent years avoiding reality, living in a world of surfaces and appearances, never looking deep enough to see what she was becoming. The mirror cracked the day I found her second phone, but it didn't break. it just started showing the truth. And the truth, as it turned out, was exactly what I needed to see.